I'm a little bit nervous. And that's okay because I take this really seriously. And I don't take speaking to anybody lightly, but especially our church, our family here at Overflow. Also, we need to just acknowledge on the YouTubes, we miss Pastor Chip. We miss Pastor Chip. We miss Michelle. We are not the same without them. There's a gap, and it's big, it's wide, and without them, it's right? There's a gap. So I just wanted to say that. I feel the gap, me personally. But I want to talk to you today about a couple of things, but mostly culture. And culture is kind of a scary word for a lot of people because we think about the culture of like public school. Ugh. We think about the culture of like the gas station down the street, right? I mean, it can be yucky. It can be. Culture can also be stunning. And what I hope to share is some vision for how we can have stunning culture at Overflow. And culture is this thing that we experience the whole of it. So it's not just one person that gives culture to this place. It's not even just the leaders that give culture to this place. Culture actually trickles all the way from the top, all the way down to the smallest baby. That's what culture does. Culture touches every generation, everybody that's there. And so I can't talk about culture without also talking about Chick-fil-A. Because we all love Chick-fil-A. Why? Yeah, it's God's chicken. Yep, it's God's chicken. The reason why it's God's chicken is actually not because the chicken tastes so good. It is good. But that's not the reason why it's God's chicken. It's when you go there, you have this whole experience that is good. Are they perfect? No. But it's good. They're good. They're good at what they do. They're good at service. They're good at timeliness. They're good at quality. Their kids' meals are better. That's in my notes. I had to bring that up. Their kids' meals are better. They're healthier. The kids' meals are. They have a set of values at Chick-fil-A. They have a set of priorities that are actually written into their training manuals. Powerful culture is written or on display or powerful culture plays itself out. I can't think of the right words right now. It plays out in the collective group all participating in the set of priorities or the set of values. That's how we get powerful culture. That's why when I'm traveling to the middle of the country, which I have never done, but when I am, I'm going to go an extra 5 miles because there's a Chick-fil-A. I'm not going to take this exit when there's a Chick-fil-A 2 exits. That is powerful culture. That is culture that draws us in. That's culture. Make sense? On top of those things, there is a responsibility and a respect for that culture that the employees have to have in order to work there. Otherwise, what happens? They lose their job. And I would even go as far to say they're probably pretty strict about that, because how could they maintain their culture if they weren't? And so there's a responsibility, a stewardship that comes with having a good, healthy culture, with having those priorities and values in place where we don't have to, if I'm just going in as a cashier, I'm 16 years old, I'm getting my first job at Chick-fil-A, I don't actually have to believe everything the owner believes, but I definitely have to respect it enough to work there and steward the culture that he believes. Does that make sense? Everybody understanding? Great. I was hoping this would go well. Okay, so let's just define the word culture, which I found fascinating. Wait for this. Listen to this. Culture. sustainable framework or a structure that supports more. What? Mind blown, right? Okay, so I think, I don't know exactly if this is true, so just take this with a big fat grain of salt. I think Chick-fil-A is the only one that caters. Why? Because they have a structure in place, a framework in place that allows them to do more than McDonald's, that allows them to do more than anybody else because of the structure that they have in place. I'm pretty sure they plan every day to be overstaffed. It's brilliant. It's so that they can serve more. They make those decisions in order to do and grow more. This is healthy culture. Healthy culture multiplies automatically. This is something they don't strive for. I don't ever see a Chick-fil-A worker sweating, ever. Like, that's where I'm going to work. They don't ever sweat there. Why? They are a well-oiled machine. Again, they're not perfect. They make mistakes, but how they treat their mistakes really matters. That's part of their culture. Guess what they do? Every mistake that's made is an opportunity to learn. It's not cancel culture. It's not, well, you are terrible at this, so we're going to put you over here. No. Let's develop you right here. Let's grow you right here. Let's stretch you right here so that you can steward this really well. And you got to train the next guy in this thing that you just failed at. Yeah. We don't treat failure that way, do we? Not normally, especially in the Big C church. But it's important. It's important that we do that. It's important that we learn how to do that well. Sorry. Responsibility is broken down into able to respond. At Chick-fil-A, their employees are trained to respond well. To respond well to failure, to respond well when they get the order wrong, to respond well when they're overwhelmed with people. They have too many people, not enough. Like they're actually feeling overwhelmed. They learn, they're taught in this culture how to respond to that. And as a church, we're not Chick-fil-A, right? You're like, so when are you going to get to what we are? Okay, we're not Chick-fil-A. We're responsible to respond to the Lord. What does that look like? How do we be trained in that? Well, we're in it. It's hands-on training. And we're in it. But it's really very important that we learn how to respond in every situation in this place the same way that Chick-fil-A does. That's what sets our culture. That's one of the things that will make our culture so strong and beautiful when we know how to respond. Not react, respond. Okay. So with setting a culture, with stewarding a culture, especially of presence and of faith, we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Chick-fil-A's not everybody's cup of tea. Can't believe that, but it's true. We're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. God has people for them. God has people for them. We don't have to feel bad about that. We don't have to try and do everything that we can to retain everybody that walks through the door. We're going to be somebody's cup of tea, for sure. A lot of people's cup of tea. And we don't have to stress about the ones that need or want to be in a different body. And actually, we should bless them and help them find where they belong. Because we all have to belong somewhere. That's the design of God. We belong with him. We belong to a family. So I'm going to talk about a culture of faith, specifically a culture of faith, not just culture can be very wide and you can hit culture from 1,000 different directions, but I'm going to talk about a culture of faith today, just because I felt like that's what the Lord said to do. And yesterday we had a meeting here. The Alliance was here yesterday morning, and it's like everything that they said confirmed this word. And I love it when the Lord does that, and we don't always have that luxury of having confirmation of what the Lord is saying. But I did feel like I had that yesterday, and I was so thankful for that. So culture of faith means that we have a standard, we have a list, we have a set of priorities here. We have a list of values here that have to do with faith that are lighting the path for all we do. So again, Chick-fil-A, they have this set of values that actually drive their behaviors, drives what they do. They're trained to do to make sure that their behaviors line up with their belief systems. So a culture of faith in this place will look kind of the same way. We'll have decisions to make about what we believe, which we already really, our pastor's amazing at setting that tone, at giving us that vision, that framework, those solid values to stand on. We already have some of that in motion. But I feel a shift in our church. Do you guys feel a shift in our church? I feel a shift in our church. Usually, a shift needs to be met with even more intentionality, even more than, just, I don't know. The shift has to be met with something. We have to meet the shift. And so what do we meet it with? More intentionality. We have to be even more pointed, even more in tune to what the Lord is doing so that we can shift with him. Make sense? All right, so let's define faith. Let's look at Hebrews. It was just really interesting to me. Right before Hebrews 11, which Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter. Hebrews 11 is where we will find the definition of faith. But just before Hebrews 11, in Hebrews 10, it says, "My righteous ones will live from my faith." My faith. But if fear holds them back, my soul is not content with them. But we are certainly not those that are held back by fear and perish. We are among those who have faith and experience true life. I just thought I'd read that because there's something about faith that puts us in truth, right? Like we experience true life in faith. I just love that. Okay, so let's define faith. Now faith brings our hopes into reality and becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things we long for. It is all the evidence required to prove what is still unseen. This testimony of faith is what previous generations were commended for. Faith empowers us to see that the universe was created and beautifully coordinated by the power of God's words. He spoke, and the invisible realm gave birth to all that is seen. Culture gives birth. A culture of faith actually gives birth. It actually produces something. We actually cook something and then give birth to it. The reason that culture does that is because culture is supposed to be the framework that gives us more. We already went through that. This literally says, now faith brings our hopes into reality and becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things we long for. Acquire is obtain. So there's things that we're longing for that we haven't obtained yet, and faith's the way to get there. Faith's the way to obtain it. Faith's the way to pull it in, to bring it in. Are you with me? You with me? Okay. All right. Let's look at Hebrews 12, just the first part of Hebrews 12. I'm not even actually going to read it. It says, "Fix your eyes on Jesus. He's the author and finisher of your faith." That's the first part of Hebrews 12. The way to a culture of faith, the way, the truth, and the life, baby. It's Jesus, one way. One way, one person, one heart. It's Jesus. A life of faith is a life of great tension. Why? Because of all that's unseen. All the things we're believing for, all the things we're hoping for, all the things that that are behind the curtain that we feel God is going to do or that God has said he's going to do. Faith is about trusting. It's not about understanding. We try to understand faith. We try to wrap our heads around the mystery of God. No. Sit in the mystery. Sit in the mystery. Yes, there's tension there. Good tension. It's good tension. We need that mystery. When things get uncomfortable or unfamiliar, that's when the tension is the greatest. When God has said something and we don't see any movement and we don't hear anything and he's just silent. And then trusting becomes a very tense and intense place. Because life is hard. Sometimes life is hard. Life is real. There will be trouble in this life. And the tension that we feel in that moment of trusting and not seeing, trusting and not hearing, is actually what we were made for. We were actually made to live in that tension of trusting, believing what he said is true. And the second that our faith is determined by our circumstances, your circumstances do not point to your faith. Your faith points to all the other things. Your circumstances your faith is not dependent upon your circumstances being good. Your seasons of life are not dependent on your faith. So I want to just talk about three things that a culture of faith will. These are things that we do. This is the training manual for a culture of faith. Very short Reader's Digest version, okay? Faith is meant to be worked out in the context of family. Not friends, not community, family. Why? Because family will be honest with you. Danny Silk taught me that your relational roots have to be so deep if you're going to challenge somebody's beliefs. If you're going to challenge anything that they do or say, the way they're parenting. If you challenge someone in any way, your relationship has to be stronger than the challenge. Otherwise, you're going to push the tree and it's going to fall down. And now your relationship is out the window. And that's not Jesus. That's not the heart of God. The heart of God is that we be rooted together, those roots running together, strengthening one another. Make sense? So we can't just talk to anybody about what we're thinking or what we're feeling. We have to talk to those that we love and that love us. And we have to stay in the conversation, even if we're a little offended. We have to stay in the conversation. A culture of faith, if we're going to have a culture of faith here, I want to be able to share this new thought that I'm having that I've never had before. I want to share that with you, and I want you to be able to say, well, this part sounds a little good. This part's a little wonky for me. That part's just dead wrong. I want you to tell me, because that's what a culture of faith, that's how we have a culture of faith. That's how we grow. Iron sharpens iron. This is what we're supposed to do. Disagreement, spiritual disagreement is not the same thing as relational disagreement. It helps us grow. So, number one, faith is meant to be worked out in family. We're supposed to love each other first. Our need to be right cannot be the main thing. I haven't always been good at that, for the record. Our need to be right cannot be the main thing. Okay, so I don't want this to be my opinion, right? I want to give you some scripture. So Romans 1, 11 through 12. This is Paul. I yearn to come to be face to face with you and get to know you, for I long to impart to you some spiritual gift that will empower you to stand strong in your faith. Now, this means that when we come together and we are side by side, something wonderful will be released. We can expect to be co-encouraged and co-comforted by each other's faith. Oh, so good. Thank you, Lord. Okay. Ecclesiastes, it says, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, but a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. It says that salvation, you work out your salvation with fear and trembling. I think faith is a big part of salvation. Wouldn't you agree? We don't actually do, like, if it says to work it out with fear and trembling, that means take it really seriously. How many things in this life do we do that we're supposed to take really seriously all by ourselves? If Paul's going in for triple bypass heart surgery, all y'all better be in the waiting room. I'm going to be there, and all y'all I'm going to make sure y'all are there too, because we're not supposed to do fear and trembling alone. We're supposed to have those voices that we can trust, the voices that love us no matter what. It's a really important a part of a culture of faith. Okay, number 2. It's the manual. Number 2. Faith doesn't deny a problem exists, but faith does deny the problem any influence. So let's talk about the first part, the first sentence. Faith doesn't deny a problem exists. The second, that you ignore a problem, your problem just got bigger. Denial is not faith. Denial is not faith. And when we say things like, no, I don't have that problem. When we say things like that, and especially when we know it and we're just saying it in faith, like, I don't have high blood pressure. No, that's not a thing. When we're saying that because of faith and we're not actually facing the reality that I need to make changes, we're being irresponsible. And guess what? God can't partner with irresponsibility. God cannot partner with irresponsibility. Remember that there's a responsibility to steward here. And part of that is not living in denial because of faith. It's okay to declare the truth. That's right. It's right to declare the truth. It's also right to have a firm grip on reality and make changes and be responsible for your problem. We have to do that. It's really important. Okay, the second part, faith denies the problem any influence. This is going to be fun. I have a story. Hang on. Paul's dad is a Dunkin' Donuts guy. He's gone to be with the Lord now. But he would love this. I wish he was here. He's a Dunkin' Donuts guy, and Krispy Kreme would never do. Never. Unless the Hot Now sign is on. And so he would come to Virginia and to visit us when we first got married, because that's where we lived when we first got married. Huh? No, we didn't have Dunkin'. I was a Krispy Kreme girl. And now this Dunkin' guy has married a Krispy Kreme girl, and we should be divorced, right? I mean, this is not going to work. And so we have this one corner. It's not far from the house from where we lived, and this corner has a Krispy Kreme on it. And we would get in the car, and he had a real sweet tooth, and so we knew that we were going to have to, whenever he came in town, we knew we were going to have to stop and get some donuts. And it's like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. The Hot Now sign's not going to be on. And we're all trying to have him face reality, because the Hopey family, they just believe what they want to believe, and that gets them really far. Actually, they just believe these realities, and then they just happen. It's the greatest, most unbelievable example of faith. Okay, so he's in the back seat, and Paul's like trying to get him into reality that, like, the Hot Now sign's not going to be on, and he goes, "Where's your faith, boy? Where's your faith, boy? Like, this is that serious. Where's your faith, boy?" Wouldn't you know, the Hot Now sign was on. And I will tell you that this is another really important part of a culture of faith is language. Paul's doubting we're not going to have enough money for our mortgage. Paul's doubting that we're even going to stay married. Paul's doubting, and you always hear, "Tony, where's your faith, boy?" Same phrase over and over and over. Where's your faith, boy? And now we have that language in our home because of the precedent that he set, the culture that he set with his words. And any kind of doubt, any kind of doubt that creeps in, Jaden thought that was funny. She's like, burp it out, girl. Because at youth, I would not say excuse me. I'd be like, bleh. You guys like that? Anyways, so there's a language that's attached to a culture of faith. It is optimistic. It is an optimistic language. We're really afraid of optimism in the Big C Church. I don't really know why, but language really, really matters. I want to speak to this just for a minute. Let's think about our internal dialogues, because there's things that we think in our minds and our hearts that actually never come out of our mouth. But you see, again, with the culture, if you don't deal with the things that never come out of your mouth, if you don't deal with the internal, then the external is never going to match up. So culture speaks to the internal. That's another just side note. Culture sees beyond what we actually see and goes further down, in the dark, underground. So we're going to go inside our internal dialogues too. I know there's a lot of women in the room that are like this because I am. I don't know about men. I think some men do it too, but we have this thing that we say, what if? Well, what if we can't pay our mortgage? Well, what if my dog dies? Well, what if that job doesn't come through? What if I don't get a raise? What if? What if? And we have this thing, it keeps us awake at night. And let me tell you that what if is firmly rooted in fear and anxiety and doubt. And it's exactly where the enemy would like for you to be. This running through scenarios, our language on the inside matters. So today, I'm going to ask you to make a shift. I'm not going to take the words away from you. I'm not going to take the what if words away without replacing it. So here you go. Here you go. This is the training manual. Replace what if with even if. Because we will have troubles. We will. And even when those things happen, faith says God's going to be good. Faith says God's not going to waste this. Faith says I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. So I'm asking you to make that shift because we need a culture of faith and trust and confidence and hope. And those things come from saying even if, not what if. The Big C Church has to move from where we are to having a victorious witness. We have to be a victorious people. We have to be a whole company of people that are walking in victory. Faith is about victory. But we're in the halls of hospitals, and other people are listening, and we're like, oh, God, I'll pray for you. Yeah, this is terrible. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it could be better. We could do better, that's all. We could do better. We could declare and decree and speak the truth and walk in authority. Authority that no matter what circumstances are, I know he's good. Faith is believing that whatever happens, he's going to be good. It might not feel good all the time, but his good is different than my good. And I have to trust that. That's faith. Okay, again, I don't want this to be just my opinion. Hebrews 13:6. So, we can say with great confidence, I know the Lord is for me, and I will never be afraid of what people may do to me. Psalm 112:7. He is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting the Lord. Proverbs 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. John 5:4-5. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. That's a promise. Everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. That's what it says. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? We already said that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the thing that, it was Hebrews 12. I just said it a few minutes ago. Yes, the author and the finisher. Thank you. Lost it. Author and finisher. Yes, he's all those things. Faith puts us in a place of victory. Having a mindset, having a heart set on faith puts us in victory. It sits us with him in heavenly places. Our witness has got to become more victorious. Okay, we're okay on time. Okay, so number three, we can go to church or we can be the church. Listen, yep, I think anybody that comes to church checks that box, they're probably going to heaven. Okay, we don't know the heart. The Lord sees that. We just have to trust the Lord with that. But it's not about these four walls. I hate to tell you. Faith is not about these four walls. The family that you come into is these four walls. The safety is these four walls. The relational roots, the moms and dads and people that will be crazy with you, that's these four walls, okay? But real faith goes everywhere you go and talks to everybody you talk to and encounters God everywhere, anywhere. And it doesn't matter if there's people around you or not. You could be all by yourself, stewarding a culture of faith. Trusting. Some of us leave it up to the handful of leaders in a church or worship leaders to steward a culture. I already said that doesn't work. If Chick-fil-A, if only their leaders did the manual, they wouldn't have the culture that they have. It has to go all the way through to the youngest, from the oldest to the youngest, from the head, all through the elders, the government, to the staff, moms and dads, to everybody, all the way down to the baby. Is Anava our youngest baby here today? Yeah, Anava's a key part of our culture here. Because think of what we can give Anava. Think of the mindset that she could have as a 6 or 7-year-old. She could lead us, for goodness sake. And if we think that she can't or won't, we're wrong. Let me just be real. Okay, Matthew 17. I promise, if you have faith inside of you no bigger than the size of a small mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move away from here and go over there, and you will see it move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Yeah, but let's talk about authority for a minute. It says, I promise, if you have faith inside of you, no bigger than a mustard seed. We think that the louder our voice is, or the more authority we come across as having, that's what moves mountains. No, bro. No. Faith is inside of you. It's inside of you, your personality. It's inside of you, your expression. It's inside of you. It doesn't have to be big, loud, authoritative. No, I can hug someone and their demons could leave. Can we believe that? Do we believe that? Because it's really important that we do. I'm not naysaying the loud, authoritative, crazy. I think there's a place for it all. It's our own expression. But understand, it doesn't have to look a certain way. Make sense? If we don't get out of what we've always seen, if we don't get out of what we've always done, if we don't get out of what we just have always known to be true, we're not going to go very far. And I believe that this structure that God wants to set up here is for the more. He wants to give us more. We have to be responsible. We have to be able to steward it. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. Our circumstances. So, yes, authority over your circumstances, you have that. We've got to get a bigger picture in our head. We've got to get a wider lens. Why? Because God has a wide lens. I'm praying for my neighbors that might be on the verge of divorce. I don't know, they're always yelling at each other, who knows? I'm praying for them all the time. But I have to get to a place where I'm like, no. In Western North Carolina, divorce is not going to be our story. In this region, in the state of North Carolina, we'll have the best marriage rate ever. And out of all the states, we're going to have it the best. We're going to have the most successful marriages, most successful families, most dug-in dads that are there. We can speak to our circumstances. There's yes, do that. But when you do that, think bigger and pray bigger. This is faith. This is authority and faith. We don't just pray for what we see. Faith is about the unseen. So we have to start partnering with the unseen, the things that we can't see, and believing and trusting that those words don't fall short. They don't fall to the ground. Make sense? We have to start binding and loosing, not just for ourselves. Listen, we can be so self-centered. I'm including myself. I'm also the same way. We can all be that way, especially when when our life is falling apart. What else do you do except pray for yourself and your circumstances? Of course, I understand, but we really have got to become more mature to see past our own circumstances. That's something that a culture of faith will do. We have to trust God. We have to take risks in prayer. We have to pray for really big things and believe that he'll do it. And even if we don't see it, listen, the faith chapter, you saw how many people died not seeing. I didn't read it, but we know that Hebrews 11 talks about all the heroes of faith that never saw what they prayed for come to fruition. Yet, heroes for trusting. And it wasn't their belief. I shared this on the internets. It wasn't their belief that they were heroes for. No, it was their commitment to the heart of God. And that is our faith. That is our faith, trusting him because we know him. Trusting that he's good because we have experienced that he's good. It's not just trust, it's not just blind trust and belief. No. That doesn't help you. Blind trust and belief, if you don't know what this says, you can't have faith. You have to know him to have faith. You have to know who he is, his nature, his character, what he's like. That's faith. You can't trust somebody you don't know. I can't meet a complete and total stranger and trust them with everything. It doesn't work. It's not a thing. Matthew 28 is the Great Commission. We know what the Great Commission says. It says that he's given us authority to rule and reign on the earth. And we don't want to fumble that ball. He's given us the ball. He's passed us the ball, and we are supposed to run with it. And we can't afford to drop it in the middle of this shift, in the middle of feeling the presence of God, the way that we have been, the way that we're experiencing the Lord in these days, in this time, this shift that's happening. We got to hold on to that ball. And listen, the linebackers are coming for you. They're coming for us all. We've got to hold on to the ball and run with everything in us. Run with everything in us. Lastly, and Mike, I don't know where Mike is. You can come up, Mike. You can come up, Mike. Chick-fil-A owners could stand on the corner of an intersection and they could say, "We're the best. Go to Chick-fil-A. Turn here for Chick-fil-A." And that actually wouldn't work. They'd get some cars here and there, but they wouldn't actually get what they have now, which is powerful culture that draws people in. Actions speak louder than words. Our actions must be, we must put a demand on what we believe. If we don't, we're the same weak church that generations have walked away from. We can't afford that. That's fumbling the ball. That's fumbling the ball. That's not to put like stress and anxiety on us to make sure that we're a certain way. It's to help us shift. In this time where the Lord is shifting us, we have got to put a demand on what we believe. And if we can't put a demand on it, if we don't know how to put a demand on it, then we don't believe it good enough. If you don't know how to put a demand on what you're believing for, then you might not be believing good enough. You only have to have a mustard seed. I'm just saying be responsible. Be responsible with what you're believing, which means you put a demand on it. Make sense? Is this making sense? So I want to tell you about a woman that is a good friend of my family's. She practically grew up with my mom, and her worst nightmare happened one day, and her son died. And her son was about 3 years older than me, and at the time I was maybe 25, 26 years old, and she called my mom, and she said, I'm going down to the funeral home, to the morgue, and I'm praying for my son to be raised up from the dead. You coming? And she said, yep. And she said, I'm only bringing those who really believe that he could do this. And then she invited me to come too. And I said no. Because I didn't want any unbelief that I might have. I was too afraid that I had unbelief. I was too afraid that I wouldn't believe with them good enough and that I might get in the way. And I'm standing here before you to tell you that next time I get that call, it's going to be a big yes. And he didn't get raised from the dead. He didn't come back to life. 3 days after that, they had the funeral, everything. 3 days after that, this woman comes to church where we are very much a family. This is years ago, of course. And she was gonna be able to speak to us all and address us all as her family because this thing has happened to her and she's our family, you know. So it's not like we're not gonna put her in the back or keep this terrible thing a secret. We're family, so we're in it together, actually. And she gets behind the pulpit, and her first words, I'll never, ever forget as long as I live, her first words, this is after she's been to the morgue, prayed for her son to come back to life, and her son doesn't come back to life. She's in the middle of her worst nightmare. And she said, God is so, so good. And she's crying, and she's crying. And she said, God is so good. And in that moment, 25-year-old Faith was like, yeah, her faith's bigger than mine. Her God is bigger than mine. But I'm telling you, it changed my whole life. That her saying that in that moment changed everything for me and gave me solid ground to stand on as far as faith goes that I never dreamed I could have. Because what she said, when she said that God is so good, even in the midst of this, what she actually said was that he's sovereign. She said, God didn't take my son. God received my son. God didn't take my son. God received my son. And she said, God, even in the midst of this, God is not going to waste this scenario. That's what she said when she said, God is so good. When her faith came to the surface like that, she believed and trusted that this worst possible scenario, this nightmare that was coming true for her, would not be wasted. That he was going to be glorified and magnified in her life, no matter what. That even if, this is an even if response, this is a faith response, a confidence response, a hope response, that no matter what my circumstances are, no matter how crazy it gets, no matter how devastating it is, even if those things happen, my God, who is faithful, my God who is able, my God who has made a way where there's been no way before, he will come and do it again. He will come and do it again, and he will not only do it for me, now he's going to give this woman this history with God. History with God, that matters. He has shown up for her in this way. He has solidified her faith in this way, and now she's going to be one that releases faith. Do you see how the Lord doesn't waste? The Lord never wastes the bad things in our lives. He does not cause the bad things. I don't believe that. You can wrestle with that. You can disagree with that. I'm fine with it. I want you to know, I don't believe God causes bad things to happen. But I do believe he will not waste it. He will not waste it. He will teach us. He will guide us. He will shepherd us. We will be people of faith because he meets us in the worst nightmare. We will be people of faith because we choose. Listen, this is a choice that we have to make. It doesn't happen just by happenstance. We have to choose to trust. We have to choose to trust. The only way we can choose to trust is by knowing him, knowing that he's been there before, knowing that he showed up for her. If he showed up for her, surely he'll show up for me. And when it doesn't look like he's showing up, and when it doesn't look like he saved my son, and when it doesn't look like, well, I just have to trust that he's good. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, but let me tell you something. That is the place where you find peace. That is the place where joy can fill you again and again. Trusting him is the only way you have peace in the middle of that storm. We have to be able to respond. We have to be so responsible with our faith. We have to be able to respond to the Lord this way with our lives and with the lives of people that are our family. We have to be able to respond to our circumstances, to their circumstances, in faith, in victory. This is the witness that we have to be. They're not coming for a defeated church. They're not going to come in here for a defeated church. That's not our place. That's not where we sit. That's not who we are. We must be a people of victory. Because of the nature of this word, I feel that we should all respond and let our actions speak louder than words. And let our beliefs drive our behavior in this moment. Let our trust drive what we do in this moment. That's what culture does. Our beliefs drive our behaviors.